Doug Worgul. Hi, how are
Hi,
you?
Yvette Walker. How are you?
I am well. I'm so glad to have you on.
I'm so happy to be on. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, we're going to talk about the new book, The Night Office, and as I said in my blog, possibly this the sequel that I have been waiting for all my life, and I'm so glad that it's finally coming out. And in fact, it's available for pre-order now.
Correct.
That's good, and we're going to talk about that. But and I have to always let people know, full disclosure, we know each other. We have known each other for some time, and so we're going to talk
20
about
years.
that. Yes, exactly. But you are an author, obviously, but you are a journalist, and that's how we know each other. But this book, the original book, Thin Blue Smoke, attracted me because not only was it so original and beautifully written, it was about things that are important to me: faith, ethics, values, and barbecue in Kansas City.
Yes.
So all of it, which is a little different than the new book, but it was a beautiful book, and I just kept waiting for, like I said in my blog, I just kept waiting for the sequel to come out because I love the characters, but it took a while, and I quoted you as to like maybe why it took a while. So again, we're going to get into all of this. So I'm super excited to have you on. So tell us a little bit about yourself. First of all, tell everyone how we know each other. As you said, 20 years.
20 years ago, we both arrived at the Star, at the Kansas City Star, at about the same time. I think within a number of weeks with one another. And you were my first supervisor. When I arrived at the Star to take over the editor's job at Star Magazine, which was
Yeah.
the Sunday supplement magazine of the Kansas City Star. And a great gig, a gig that I consider to be one of the best jobs I've ever had. And you were one of the best bosses I ever had. I think we got along well from day one. And you let me go run with my vision for the magazine, which was a little bit different than what other editors in the past had done with the magazine. I saw things a little differently, and you encouraged me in that way. And I have always been grateful because it was just a very fun time to be in journalism and to be a magazine editor. And my charge from both of our bosses, our editor and our publisher, was to use the magazine to celebrate and lift up all things uniquely Kansas City. And of course,
Absolutely.
barbecue is part of that, but there's also many other things that are uniquely Kansas City, the blues, and those things found their way into Thin Blue Smoke, my debut novel, of which The Night Office is its direct sequel. So the book itself and my becoming an author are directly related to my time at the Star and to my time working with you. And it's a time I cherish.
Well, if you're saying that I had anything to do with the beautiful book itself or with your inspiration, I mean, I am so honored. Listen, Star Magazine was a great magazine. Like a lot of newspaper magazines, it went along its way. A lot of newspaper magazines tended to go out of business. But it was a great magazine. I loved your editorial vision for it. And when you do bring someone on, if you are fortunate to be a hiring editor and you bring someone, of course that's what you want to do. You want to bring someone on that you think will be successful, and you want to encourage that editorial vision. So yeah, of course, why would I not do that? For sure. So, and I appreciated the work that you did,
Thank
and
you. It was
knowing
fun. It
you.
was a fun time, wasn't
It
it?
was fun. Yes, it was. Absolutely. So, are you from originally Kansas City? Tell us a little bit about where you
Yeah, no, I'm not. I came to Kansas City in 1989 to join an advertising agency here. I was born and raised in Michigan. I've got kind of three hometowns in Michigan: Battle Creek, Lansing, which is where I lived probably the longest, and then also, well, actually, Kalamazoo is where I lived the longest. I went to university there and then stayed there afterwards, and I moved from Kalamazoo to Kansas City in 1989. Was in the advertising business for a while, and then went to the client side of the marketing business, and Worked at St. Luke's for a while, and because my area of specialization within advertising was healthcare. I also worked for a time at Carondelet Health. But after my time at the Star, where I really kind of immersed myself in Kansas City's barbecue culture because of the magazine and because of my other editorial assignments in the features department at the Star, I left with and while I was there, I wrote a book on the history of Kansas City barbecue, and which
Mhm.
even immersed me deeper into the culture of Kansas City barbecue. And so when I left,
But that book, though, that book, which book came first?
the
This
Grand Barbecue, which was the history book that I wrote, nonfiction history book of
yeah.
Kansas City barbecue. Yeah, that came
Okay,
first. That
that's
was
interesting, see, and I don't remember it that way, so that's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. That book was published by the Star
Mhm.
in 2001. And so 25 years ago now, it seems like just yesterday, but it's been quite a
Yeah.
while. And so I was able to then when my journalism career kind of ran its course, and I found myself laid off as part of a massive layoff at Carondelet Health. There were 3,000 of us that left in one day. It was a
Mhm.
nasty thing, but I kind of needed to reinvent myself. And my wife, who's very wise in these ways, she said, "Well, you've got marketing, you've got deep, deep knowledge of barbecue, and you're a good writer. You've been a professional writer all of your career in every
Mhm.
capacity where you've worked. Um, you should probably, you know, uh, see if one of the barbecue joints in town needs a marketing director." And so I approached Jeff and Joy Staney, the owners of Joe's Kansas City Barbecue. Back then it was known as Oklahoma Joe's. And they brought me on. And so I was there for another 10 years, and I retired from there in 2020. So that kind of gives you um, a rough, brief version of my career and my time here in Kansas City.
Yeah. Now, let's talk a little bit about Thin Blue Smoke, and I'm just going to read from your Amazon page. And I think this is true. An epic American redemption tale about love and loss, hope and despair, God and whiskey, barbecue and blues. I mean, who doesn't want to get into that?
Right.
Kern Williams is a ruined ex big league baseball player, ex big league ball player, an ex felon with an attitude problem, and the owner of a barbecue joint he has to run. Ferguson Glenn is an Episcopal priest, a fading literary star with a drinking problem, and a past he is running from. A.B. Clayton and Sammy Merzetti are two lost souls in need of love, understanding, and another cigarette. Hilarious and heartrending, sacred and profane, this book marks the emergence of a vital new voice in American fiction. I totally agree with that. So, all right. We know that you had been in Kansas City. You know, obviously, Kansas City is important to you. We know barbecue is important to you. But how did this book emerge? And the characters and the names. I've always loved the names of your
Thank
characters.
you. Thank you. This book emerged from a time in my professional life where I was a little bit, well, more than a little bit, frustrated with my professional assignment and needed a creative outlet because I wasn't getting that at work on the job where I had been for many years. Been finding a lot of creative outlet. So I started a blog, and blogs were new then. This was
Mhm.
probably 2004, relatively new. I approached my bosses at the Star and asked them if I could write a blog for the Star. And the Star was a little late coming to the internet and to online journalism. And so they didn't encourage that idea. So I started one of my own. And I'd always been a big fan of Garrison Keillor's Lake Wobegon monologues on Prairie Home Companion. He created this really rich world, deep, familiar characters that people came to love, hearing about them every week. They were deeply embedded in this place called Lake Wobegon, this tiny little village on the edge of a prairie where all the men were good looking and the children were all above average. And so I decided I'd try to create a community of my own, and that I would the place it would be rooted in would be in Kansas City, of course, in a tiny little fictitious barbecue joint. And so that was the place and how the place came about. it would take more time than we've got for me to tell you the genesis of each of the individual characters. Uh, I just and I started posting little episodes from, little vignettes based in this barbecue joint, based on the characters that I created. I started posting those on this blog, and people were drawn to it. And I think in part because I had a history as a barbecue writer and a journalist. I think a lot of people originally thought that this was real and that I was posting real slices of real life from real people in a real barbecue joint. I tried to disabuse them of that notion as quickly as possible. I didn't want to deceive anybody. But I gathered a readership fairly quickly. And in probably your 20 or 30 posts in, people began to say, if this is fiction, and some people were still suspicious that maybe it was real life, they said, if this is fiction, you should write this as a novel. This has the feel of a novel and the depth of a novel. And so I took that advice seriously. And when I decided I was going to write it as a novel instead of just a series of ongoing blog posts like a serial you would read in a magazine that was published every month, I really had to stop and reflect a little bit on what kind of book I wanted this to be. And I decided I would write the book that I myself wanted to read, and that the themes in the book, which were already rooted in this, the posts that I had posted on this blog, would reflect the things that were of most interest to me. People struggling with disappointment, struggling with loss, struggling with squandered gifts, hoping for second chances in life, struggling with faith, struggling with doubt. Doubt is a big theme in the book, and struggling for answers. Our colleague, Bill Timaeus, who was a columnist at the Star for well over 40 years, and was he wrote a lot about faith there at the Star. He once told me that life is more often revealed in unanswered questions rather than unquestioned answers. And I think
That
there's a
is
lot.
so Bill.
Yeah, that is so Bill, and it's so deeply profound. And so this book, Thin Blue Smoke, there are a lot of unanswered questions in that book, and there are a lot of unanswered questions in its sequel as well. I grew up deeply churched. My father was a Baptist minister, an American Baptist minister, and at last count, there, including my father, there were about 10 family members that were, in the ministry. And so I grew up around a lot of unquestioned answers. And when I began to ask questions myself, a lot of my own family members were deeply uncomfortable with my asking questions. And I put those questions in the book. But it's not only a book about people struggling with doubt or struggling with faith. It's about barbecue. It's about baseball. It's about the blues. It's about friendship. It's about second chances. And one of the most important themes of all in the book are fathers and sons and the contentious relationship, the intimate relationship, the distant relationship that exists in many father-son relationships. So anyway,
Yeah.
does that answer your question, Yvette?
Well, I mean,
Or
as
does it
much
get us to the next?
yeah, it gets us to the next question, and I don't want to say as much really as it should, because people need to read it for themselves and see what they take from it. Everything you said is true. Of course, some characters and some plot lines are going to really touch people more than others
Yes.
for whatever reason, and probably because of my own deep interest in faith. Is Ferguson Glenn, who has doubt, who has a squandered talent,
Yes.
everything that you said, who has a drinking problem, is an Episcopal priest. And I was raised Catholic, but after I left the Star and went to Oklahoma, I actually went to Episcopal church. So all
Mm-hmm.
these, there was similarities there, and of course, Episcopal priests can marry. The woman he meets is a beautiful, amazing Black woman
Yes.
named Periwinkle. Again, I love the names.
Periwinkle Brown.
Periwinkle Brown, of course. And I love her. So that plot line kind of resonated with me as much, probably maybe a little bit more than the others. but the other plot lines are great. You know, the father son plot line is so important and so interesting. Of course, you know, that's not my experience. I don't have children and I'm not a dad. So, you know, so I'm not going to fully take away what you might take away from that piece of it. But there's, I guess what I want to say is there's a little bit for everybody. I mean, it's just,
I
you know,
think
it's
so. I
so
mean, I hope
well
so.
rounded. Yeah.
Right. I hope so. And it's also, I mean, not only does it deal with the real things that real people deal in real life,
Mm-hmm.
death, lost opportunity, disappointment, career disappointment and heartache, jealousy, crime, but also there's a lot of humor in the book. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
funny book, I think. I
Yeah.
mean, I hope I achieved that, and that has come out in a lot of the reviews that have been posted online on Amazon and on Goodreads. People think it's a funny book, and that was really deeply gratifying to me because I love to laugh and I love to make people laugh. And
Yeah.
humor is a part of the human condition, and I think it's a way that we cope with sadness. Sometimes we laugh because there's no other choice but other than laugh except to cry.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also, it's also one of the things that binds us together and tends to bridge differences is humor. And so I really hoped that humor would find its way into the pages, and I think it has. The other thing about the father-son dynamic in the book is that those of us who are raised in the faith, so to speak, are familiar. The metaphor that's most often used for God is father.
Yeah.
And so the father son dynamic that's present in the book is much about the God human dynamic as it is the father son dynamic, because
Yeah.
some of the characters in the book had no father. Some of the a very distant father, and some of them had very close, intimate father figures who weren't necessarily their father, but loved them dearly. I'm going to cough.
Yes. Yes. Okay.
Excuse me.
Okay. All right. Now let's talk about the night office. I asked you why it took so long to for this to emerge, for this piece of the story to emerge. I would say just from my I love it. I love it. It was everything I wanted. I do think it's a little different, a little bit of a different tone than the
Yes,
first book. I don't think it's not that it's not funny, but it's just it's different.
it is
And
different.
there are resolutions which of course needed to happen. And so there are resolutions that happen in such a great way. So all right, why did it take so long though?
Uh, couple reasons, and I'll also address the differences that you mentioned because that's real, and readers should understand that the tone in one book will be a little slightly different than the tone in its sequel. It took me a while because I did have a couple of significant. I had a significant career setback, and then I had a significant career change. And I really needed, especially during my time at Joe's, I really needed to concentrate on that. It was a gig I really enjoyed. It was super fun. It required a lot of me. I had to learn new things. I had to learn a whole new industry. Um, and I was into it. I mean, I enjoyed it. And to be honest, it was a very satisfying outlet for me creatively. I did a lot of writing while I was there. I created a little in-house magazine for our customers. I'm good at magazines, and I really poured my heart and soul into that magazine. I was doing social media. The restaurant company hadn't really done social media, and social media was really emerging as a critically important marketing tool
Yeah.
for all businesses. And so I really threw myself into that, tried to learn it, tried to create a personality for the company that would shine through in its social media posts. So it was fun, and I kind of gave myself over to that for a while. Then when I really started writing again, I'd had a couple of ideas that were knocking around that I thought might work out as novels. One, I was about 300 pages into one of them, and I realized I'd bitten off more than I could chew. It was a great novel idea, but it was too big for me. It
Mm.
outgrew my writing style, and it outgrew the scope of what I think. It became a, a, a more ambitious novel than I was ready to tackle. Another one, I was about 200 pages into it, and it was feeling off to me. I liked the story a lot, had really invested years of research into the story. But as I was passing chapters along to Rebecca, my wife, who's, she's a J school grad and a great reader and a great editor. And she said, this just doesn't feel like you.
Mm.
And that was an important thing to hear because it told me that what I was feeling myself about the book was accurate.
Mm-hmm.
So I put that on a shelf, and I decided what I really needed to do for a while was just not write and see what came to me. So I played my guitar for a year and tried to relearn piano, and just let other kinds of creative juices flow. And it finally, and not all at once, but slowly began to emerge that I've been given one story, and the story was not yet complete.
Mm-hmm.
And so I needed to return to Thin Blue Smoke and complete that story. It felt complete at the time that I finished it, but as I reread it and revisited it, I realized that there were a lot of unresolved storylines. And I had left these characters, I had implied in there's a gap between the end of the last chapter and the beginning of the epilogue, a time gap. I
Mm-hmm.
don't say how long it is, but I imply that there's a time gap. And I imply in the epilogue that some of the unresolved issues that are still unresolved at the end of the last chapter have been somewhat resolved because the ending is a rather upbeat ending. But the end of the last chapter is not upbeat.
No.
So I imply that there's a time that has passed and that things have happened during that time to kind of bring them out of a rather dark period. Well, the Night Office takes place in that time gap, in that time between the end of the last chapter of Thin Blue Smoke and the beginning of the epilogue of Thin Blue Smoke.
Mm-hmm.
And I will tell you, well, I guess I won't give it away. I'm hoping that people will be interested enough after hearing you and I talk that they'll buy either one or the other or both books. But try to bring closure to the characters and to the story. Some writers are given mini stories to write. Some writers are given characters and then they write mini stories in which all these characters appear. I will tell you one, I'm going to take a little diversion. At one point, a film and TV producer called me and asked to buy the rights to Thin Blue Smoke. And
Wow.
that was a great honor and a great adventure. We came to an agreement. He bought an option on the story, which means that he had the right of first refusal if he was ever able to kind of pull a project together with a director and actors and a screenwriter and that kind of thing. And we met one time with a producer and a director and a showrunner. We decided rather quickly it wouldn't make a very good movie, but it'd make a great TV series. And so we all met in Atlanta at the home of one of his investors. And we met for 5 days to talk about a TV series based on Thin Blue Smoke. And one of the first questions that was asked when we really got down to brass tacks and rolled up our sleeves, really started to work hard at it, was, is this TV series going to be based on the book or based on the characters in the book? And there's a big
Mm.
difference.
Yes.
We could take the characters and put them in a new story if we wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
That's not necessarily the story that's told in Thin Blue Smoke. Or are we going to tell the story of Thin Blue Smoke? I raised my hand right away and said, I really want to tell the story of Thin Blue Smoke. I think it's the story. It tells the story of these characters in the truest way. And they all agreed after some discussion. But, you take Harry Potter, right? Different story each time. Same characters, but different story. The Night Office is not a different story. It's the same story, but it's the end of the story. And so it's a very direct sequel. It's a continuation of the story of Thin Blue Smoke. And I'm grateful I've been given this story. I'm writing a prequel now of Thin Blue Smoke that really tells more of Ferguson's backstory
Mm.
because in Thin Blue Smoke, we learn a lot about Laverne's childhood and young adulthood. and we learn about AB's childhood and young adulthood, but we only learn a little bit about Ferguson's backstory. Very little. We learn about one early, short, failed marriage, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't learn much else. And the prequel that I'm working on now will tell that. And then we'll have the whole story. Thin Blue Smoke will still be at the heart of it, however.
Yeah, well, I love that because I'm a Ferguson fan. This is that's an example of a good writer can take a reader on a ride, and even if it doesn't go in the place that they think it's going to go, it can still be very satisfying. So in Night Office, this is not Ferguson's story.
It's not.
Ferguson was a bigger role, had a bigger role to play in Thin Blue Smoke, but this is this is Vern's story. This is AB's story in the Night Office.
And then there's
But every bit as I loved it. Every bit as satisfying. Even though I'm like, okay, let's see what Ferguson and Periwinkle are getting up to. But it's not their story, so I will be very happy to see.
I'm losing you a little bit here. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
It's not as Ferguson is in it, but it really and he's still struggling with the same issues that he struggled with in Thin Blue Smoke, and those aren't really resolved. But I do think there's a satisfying conclusion to his story in The Night Office. It's not really a resolution as much as it is a conclusion. And I think it's satisfying. I think most readers will like it and embrace it. And then there's a character introduced in Thin Blue Smoke who has a much bigger role in The Night Office. And I'm eager for readers to find themselves learning more about he's not a new character, but learning more about a character who was a minor player in Thin Blue Smoke and who's now an important character in this follow-up. So
absolutely, and we do get brand new characters as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. And I do think that helps freshen it up a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so pre-orders are available now, but
Yes.
not on Amazon. So how are we going to find the book?
Oh, actually, you can pre-order on Amazon. Yeah, you can pre-order on Amazon, and I'll be posting a link on my socials to Ingram Spark, which is another place where you can pre-order. But I think, but yes, you can. It's available on Amazon now for pre-order.
Okay, good. Well, that's good to know. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great.
And it will be published then. It'll be released on June 16th. So we're getting pretty close.
Yeah.
About 3 weeks away.
Okay, absolutely. Yeah. Well, this will go up pretty quickly. And it's going to be in my birthday month. So how exciting!
Yay!
It's a little birthday present to me. Okay. Well, if you are, and I love all of us. If you are a reader who just loves a good story, and I loved the crime aspect of it, in Thin Blue Smoke. But it's just a good story with interesting characters. I mean, that's what keeps me, kind of pulled in really to any book, no matter what it's about.
Right.
If you don't have just really interesting characters that you care about, and you don't have an interesting plot, then what do you have? So if folks don't know your work, I want to encourage them, get the first book. You need to read Thin Blue Smoke. You need to read that, and then read The Night Office. And I think it's a road that you'll be happy to have traveled down.
Well, thank you, Yvette. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and.
Well, thank you for all your support. Thank you for being a great boss. Thank you for writing a great endorsement for a great review of Thin Blue Smoke back in the day, and thank you for writing a great endorsement for The Night Office. I'm really, really deeply grateful.
Well, no, thank you. I just, congratulations on everything. Love the work, and it's just so good to kind of get in contact with you again because
yes,
we had been kind of out of contact after
right.
I left Kansas City. So I'm back in Kansas City now. The new book is out. We've had barbecue together.
Yes, we have. And it won't be the last time either.
No, absolutely. We will definitely have to get barbecue again.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Yvette.